In 2012, GER was invited as an expert evaluator for the European Commission's Research and Innovation Funding Programme, the 7th Framework Programme. Prior to this role at the centre that I referred to, GER managed the National Assistive Technology Department. He holds an electronic engineering degree, postgraduate diploma in social and vocational rehabilitation management, and a PhD from the Centre of Disability Studies in UCD. He's continuing as a visiting lecturer at the University College in Dublin and the Dublin Institute of Technology. He's been extremely gracious and generous with his time and commitment to this conference. Would you please welcome Dr. Gerald Craddock.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and ladies and gentlemen. Delighted to be here. Yes, I have the gizmo. First, I would like to thank Jane Brinkoff for inviting me here to Australia. It's a pleasure to be here for the first Universal Design Conference, and definitely the intro speeches by Michael, Ian and Dr. Robin definitely summarise where universal design is thriving here in Australia. One of the founding fathers of universal design, Professor Edward Steinfeld, I talked to him last week. He is a professor at the University of Buffalo, upstate New York, and we were talking about the keynote here in Australia. First, he best wishes to Jane and the success of the conference, but very much saying the huge amount of work that is happening right across Australia around universal design. And I think that was stated very clearly in the opening addresses, kind of the core messages about diversity, equality, creating an environment that everybody is respected. And I loved Michael's, I'd like to borrow that stick, the message stick that I could use both as a symbol but also possibly as a weapon for some of the more intransient colleagues that we may have to deal with in selling our message. So Jane asked me to give an overview, quick overview, what is universal design? And again, if Ed Steinfeld was a founding father, Elaine Ostroff from the States would be classified as a founding mother. Again, referring back to Andrew and my own mother. Hopefully she will not appear at this conference. So she talks about, in probably one of the key publications on defining universal design, which is in its 2nd edition, Universal Design Handbook. She talks about, contrary to the assumption that attention to the needs of diverse people limits good design, the results of imaginative designers around the world reveal a wide range of application that delight the senses and lifts the human spirit when universal design is integral or central. So the challenge, universal design challenges designers, and we are all designers in our own small, big way. We are all part, as again referring back to Michael, we're all part of this big mob, our big clan, which is called humanity. And we all have a part to play, and that is crucial. And cornerstone, what is universal design? And again, Michael talks about that journey. So we did not collaborate beforehand on these slides. So again, a very universal message across from the northern hemisphere to the southern hemisphere. We are on a journey. So we are part of a continuum. And where are we on the journey? Well, we'll find out by 4:30 tomorrow afternoon where we are. So again, one of the key publications is the World Disability Report, which was produced by the World Health Organization and the World Bank, and it defined where accessibility and where universal design are actually moving in probably divergent and convergence, where the defined accessibility provides basic access and usability of facilities, product, services for people with disabilities. And then it talks about paradigm shift, that we're on this journey, where it talks about enables universal design, enables independence, social participation for all through continual improvement. So it's not just today or tomorrow we will have that improvement, it will be ongoing, continual improvement as we gather more knowledge, more information, and particularly more evidence on what are the key issues and how do we actually resolve these issues. Again, one of the key international conferences was held in Oslo on Universal Design 2012, and it talked about 3 key trends that it was seeing over the last 10 to 15 years in the area of universal design. Moving more from regulation, which is again looking at, I suppose, limited standards versus approach towards innovation. Looking at accessibility and the journey towards inclusion, again where we are all involved. And again, rather than talking about barriers, talking about the whole area of sustainability. And then our cities, our towns, our villages, our countryside, sustainability is what we are here to do, as in we are only here to custodians of this land, and again, as Michael put very eloquently, on these grounds of our ancestors and for our future families, etc. So, new terminology that we're now beginning to see around universal design is the whole area of creativity and innovation, and again, where we talk about what is creativity, what is innovation. The CEO of the UK Design Council just only 2 weeks ago summarised it very well, where creativity is the generation of new ideas, innovation is the successful exploitation of these ideas. And the conduit, the connection between both of these is design, good design, universal design. Again, just key individual I've run into in the last couple of years, a philosopher called Michel Puy from Sorbonne University in Paris, and he talks about what is universal and universalism and the whole area of design. Design, as in, would be seen very much as an exclusive item, term in itself, where the term universal is very much about inclusive. So again, the merger of these terms, and his concern from a philosophical perspective is that the design and the more exclusive may take over from the whole inclusive aspect. So again, in conferences like this where we can share information, new knowledge, new experiences, I think is very important that we see these differences and how we can overcome them working together. Great design, Guggenheim Museum, New York, where again Wright talked about designing a building that everybody could actually use. So rather than putting in the stairs, the whole museum is built on one continuous ramp. Again, looking at another museum, if anyone has been to the Louvre in Paris, one of the most beautiful designs of a lift that I've seen is which is incorporated into a spiral staircase, as you can see from these images on your screen here. Again, not just talking about inspiring design, very everyday products, where again looking at the sink around the kitchen, where you can share between grandmother and granddaughter, again where you can use your washing machine without any difficulties, or again as we go shopping, and then everybody now goes through automatic doors without ever thinking about that this is a universal design, this is good design. So most great designs are invisible as we encounter the difficulties. This is where we need to be engaging and working together. Some of our own work in Dublin, in Ireland, where we have a Lewis transport system, which has been recognised as probably one of the better designs right across Europe. But it's linking not only the built environment, it's also looking at it from the service perspective, but it's also looking at the technology where people can now actually use accessible apps to actually find their times, locations where the actual transport service and system operates. Poor design, on the other hand, in our neighbouring country, the before and after on this family who had a teenager with a significant mobility difficulty, the local council built this contraption on your right-hand side, and this is a close-up of what was designed. I'm not quite sure if design is the appropriate word for this house. They've asked for it to be removed, but the council will not remove same design. This was the Winter Olympics in Russia. Again, talking about where it was looking at retrofit access into a building. These doors actually open outwards, so I'm not quite sure. And this is in the EU, in the Commission in Brussels, and they talk about that this is great design. I've sat on numerous occasions as I go to Brussels watching people manoeuvring this, and it is a death trap, basically. People wandering off the steps are trying to operate on this very severe ramp, as you can see in front of us. We're not great in Ireland. We've had some very poor design images here showing the very small locations or the size of apartments, and I think you used the same expression here in Australia, you couldn't swing a cat. There was no harm to this cat. This was in shooting this video. So are we talking about design for or design with? I think this is the journey we're on, that we're moving from the for to with people. And this is, I suppose, the landmark on defining universal design was the UN Convention in 2007, which is now of July 2014, has been ratified by 147 countries. It has been the fastest ratified UN convention ever. There has been 158 signatories of same. And it defines universal design. It means the design products, environments, programs, services to be used by all people to the greatest extent possible without the need for adaptation or specialised design. And it has the caveat, universal design shall not exclude assistive devices for particular groups of persons with disabilities where this is needed. So again, incorporating all people in society. And again, it puts the challenge down to state parties, governments, city offices, which state parties are to undertake, promote research, development of universally designed goods, services, equipment and facilities, to promote their availability and use, and to promote universal design in the development of standards and guidelines. Again, I will talk about particular standards in a few moments. In our own legislation, and there is in the centre, I will talk more about specifically on the centre tomorrow. Within the legislation, again, we were very close to what was happening at the UN, so we adopted the term universal design. Other terms, such as in the UK, they talk about inclusive design. In Europe, design for all. Definitely this part of the world, Malaysia, Japan, Australia, the term is universal design. And I will talk a bit more about that tomorrow, in that I think we need to be, as a family, use one term, and I will talk about language later on in this presentation. Again, we talk about age, covering all ages, from young children right up to older people. As we can see, I think they think they're Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire in their mind. So again, we are old It all depends how we're looked after, how we're respected. Again, we talk about size, and again, obesity is a scourge, I think, particularly in the Western world, and particularly in Ireland. It has become a significant factor. Again, possibilities rather than just a disability, and looking at disability, including the Simpsons, where we talk about left power. I'm a lefty myself, so this is on behalf of all the lefties in the audience today. Again, universal design assumes every person experiences barriers, reduced functioning, some form of disability, temporary or permanent, at some stage in their life. So we will all experience it either in the past, present, or in the future. And I suppose one of the key publications, which is probably the most widely read book in the design world, by Victor Papanek, Design for the Real World, where he talks about design is basic to all human activities. So there's no activity, and again, I would challenge people at a coffee if they can come up with a human activity that does not incorporate universal design as a key component. So when we look at it from a global perspective, and particularly the OECD, they talk about the more demanding citizen customer, increasing social complexity and diversity, which I think is very well described by Deputy Lord Mayor about Sydney, and I think most cities right across the globe, overstretched resources. And again, we will talk more about the implementation gap of government policies to promote transparency, efficiency, and what we were definitely seeing in Europe, the whole trust of government, what's actually happening, and the whole transparency, and for the citizen to be very involved in how decisions are made. Demographic changes, Ian mentioned this in his opening address about the older population. It is a growing population. And again, the change of ratio working population to older people is significantly changing, which again is putting huge demands, particularly on insurance and pension trusts, etc. So what are the core ingredients for universal design and as a catalyst for change? We talk about from, again, the OECD talk about kind of three distinct levels, be it from the monologue, where just providing basic information to the citizen, to further step along that journey where it's consultation and discussion, or finally to a dialogue where it is looking at active participation by the citizen themselves in co-designing, co-producing better practices, better environments for all citizens. Again, when we talk about problems, and a great publication by your own government here on public policy talks about wicked problems in public policy. Again, I give the URL, which was published in 2007, and it defines three levels of problems. Tame problems, which we know the solution almost before we tackle the problem. Complex, we know what the problem is, but we're not quite sure what the solution is. And then for wicked, which again, a lot of the issues that we're dealing with, particularly when we talk about older people, people with disabilities in the community, be it around education, employment, quality of life, we have some idea of the complex or the mosaic of the difficulties, but we've no idea what the solutions are. And again, we talk about climbing this mountain, complex problems to the wicked problems. A key publication from the UK, which has been part of the European network, looking at the public sector and the design ladder. And again, looks at it from a three-step approach, the magic three. Design for discrete problems, again, the tame problem. When we look at more complex, we need capacity and we need skills, we need tools, particularly design tools. I will talk a bit more about some key tools that we've used in our own centre. And then finally, design for policy, that it is a core part of government, local authorities, how they actually do their work and engage with all its citizens. So the design ladder, again, the 3 core steps. So if we combine the 3 distinct elements, we're looking at a systems view of change and a catalyst to change, universal design being central to that. If we want to tackle wicked problems, we need to be participating with all our citizens, and we need to be using design thinking, design tools as part of that. Again, just summarising the 4 key recommendations from the UK Design Council, which has now been incorporated into the European Union Design for Growth and Prosperity, a publication I will just talk a bit further in the presentation here. So 4 key recommendations: use the public sector design ladder as a tool and roadmap for progression, build design thinking into government and public policy practice, build a strong design sector that can offer strategic and service design to the public sector. And I think that is a huge part we have to do in third level education. We are not producing the designers that can actually engage at a strategic and service design level, and particularly to work closely with the city fathers or at regional, national level. Build the evidence base, and again, the lack of evidence, clear data, and I will mention that a little further. So, when we talk about our research, the 2 key questions we're looking for in gathering this data: the quest for fundamental understanding. I think we have some basic understanding of what universal design is. I don't think we've gathered the evidence, particularly to impact on at a national level or at a global level as yet. We're on this journey. And again, the key element, considerations of use. So using a term which is now being widely used, particularly in industry, in the ICT or information communication technologies industry, we talk about use-inspired basic research. And it was developed by Stokes back in '98. And he talks about 4 key quadrants. It talks about pure basic research, and he used Bohr. Anyone who's done nuclear science, he was the guy who actually found the atom. But it was just purely looking at the atom, not how it was going to be applied, or splitting the atom, etc. You had the pure applied research, which was Edison, who developed electricity, but he was purely looking for commercial interest on generating electricity. And then we have Pasteur, and we all drink pasteurized milk, where he was looking at what were the problems, particularly in Paris back in the 1800s. And he was looking at how to resolve the problems, and that is why it has become known as the Pasteur, the 4th quadrant on use-inspired basic research. So again, I suppose some of the terminology that is being used in the big industries, and we need to be embracing and working closer with the main industrial players, by the Intels, the Microsofts, etc. out there. Again, we need to be looking at global common language, generating taxonomies and classification systems. And to do this, we need to, using this expression, standardise globally, implement locally, or a term that is now more fashionable called globalisation, which is the merger of the global and the local. Again, international standards, I think, are a key driver for how we will actually make change, be it nationally but also internationally. And the ISO ergonomics standard talks about accurate terminology which is based on internationally agreed language is fundamental to design. And this is particularly important where human involvement is expected. So universal design, the core, is working with humanity, working with people. So we need to be talking and speaking the same language. So again, going back to the UN have defined universal design, I think we need to be using that language as we talk to ourselves, but also to other potential new partners along the way. So universal design guidance and the ICF, the International Classification of Function, World Health Organization, have classified the human function for the globe. So it demonstrates how the World Health Organization International Classification of Functioning Health Disability can be applied to the development of design guidance standards by using a set of linking rules with related classifications to represent the interaction of human function activities and environmental factors. So the question is was this work that we produced and delivered 2013, is this use-inspired basic research? Why did we do this? We did this because work we were involved, or still involved in, is the International Standard Guide 71. First edition was in 2001, just at the same time World Health Organization came out with classification. So Guide 71 did not include the World Health Organization, ICF. It is now out and being reviewed. We had a 5-day meeting. My colleague was here in Sydney, January of last year, working on this new guide. Are people familiar with ISO Guide 71? Show of hands. One. I thought that would be two. Okay. An important document, as in it's a guidelines for standards developers to address the needs of old people and persons with disabilities. So for all standards developers, that they can use this guide in any standards they're developing to include the needs and requirements of older people and people with disabilities. Again, just outlining what are the key aims of this. So within the document and its revision, ICF was not included. So we felt within the centre we needed to do the basic research and how this could be applied within the new guide. And so we developed, again for people who are not familiar with the ICF, it talks about body function, it talks about activities, participation, the key environmental factors and the personal factors and how they all interact together. So it is a very comprehensive classification of human function, but also looking at the activity participation and what are the human factors. And again, within that framework, it is a coded system. So the body functions are defined by codes, body structures, activity participation, environment. Work, lots of work, as I said, on this journey. The fifth component, personal factors, is not encoded within the classifications, and there would be a lot of concern that the work stopped and hasn't been continued to include personal factors. So work that we did, we developed this model called the PAE, which is the person, activity, environment, and how they can actually work together for people to participate and improve their performance, be their own personal performance, the performance of the product, etc. So a quick snapshot of an example is using a standard tap or faucet. On the left hand side is a lever handle, which makes it easy for people to use. On the right, particularly if you have soapy hands or have arthritis or difficulty in twisting the knob, quite difficult to do. So here is a breakdown of the classification that we produced, looking at the three key components on the left: activity, person, environment, and then the tasks involved. Looking at the ICF, if you see the source of the terms, so not only were we using ICF, but also we're looking at other international standards. So the TR 22411 is the ergonomic standard, which defined round, hard to grip faucet handles, so a specific code for that. So a lot of struggle. We've produced the document, then we had to get it incorporated. As we speak, the coding system that we've developed has been incorporated into the international standard. Still a bit of work, as Man says, it hasn't been signed off as yet, which we hope the new guide will be signed off in February 2015. So again, looking at what's the basic research and how can this be applied to something very practical. I kept big data in small letters on the top of the screen there. It is an area that we need to collaborate and work together on gathering significant data sets, and I know work that's happening here. Katie Bridge, who's in the audience, I know it's one of her passions around how we gather data, not only nationally but also internationally. So we're talking about strategic operational partnerships with people, also with the design community and also the building community. So quick examples showing kind of a global picture of where universal design and kind of key centres across the globe, be it within Europe, ourselves in Dublin. Also Norway would be a significant contributor to the evidence base around universal design. The United States, India, Malaysia, Singapore, Japan, also here in Australia. And concurrently, Professor Ed Stanfield is presenting at the first Universal Design Conference in South Africa, in Cape Town, today. We're running concurrent sessions. We could go live, but there's a time difference between us and them. So again, when we talk about our design community, and I mentioned this, a key publication from the European Commission, Design for Growth and Prosperity. And within that, again, they're talking about a coding system called the NACE, which is the European Coding System, and including design and particularly specialised design as a specific code, but looking at it from an economic perspective. And I think when we talk about design, and particularly as we try and sell the concept, we are still quite shy of being able to define what are the economic benefits. We talk globally, it does make a difference because you design it once, everybody can use it, but it is producing the economic argument behind this. So this is work we're about to start, and the reason why we're doing this, we're just got the chair of a new European standard on universal design, which is looking at UD and how it can be integrated into the manufacturing process, and it's under a UD mandate 473, which is just first meeting happens in 2 weeks' time in Brussels. No, actually next week in my own centre in Dublin. Actually, I'm going to miss it, but my colleague James Hubbard will be leading this work out. And a key element is how do we actually present the economic case for universal design. So this is a four-year journey that we're on, and again we would like you to participate and collaborate with us as part of this journey. And again, just putting it into an international context, there is an international system of economic activity classifications. And you see the world level, it's called the ISIC. At the EU level, it's the NACE, and then there are actually national coding systems. And this is data that's gathered every year, statistical data that is gathered. For example, it is our National Statistics Office in Ireland that collects this data. So we need to be engaged with these, we need to be defining what is universal design, what are the economic codes we're looking at, and how we can actually develop that not only at a European level but also at an international level. Again, work that Ed Stanfield is looking at, in the built environment, the whole building design guide, which has been developed over the last 10 years by the National Institute of Building Sciences in the United States. And that has a specific coding system which uses the Omni-class coding system. Again, defining each element. It has got thousands of codes on each item within the built environment. So significant work, and we can't actually do this in isolation. This can only be done internationally, collaborating with yourselves, ourselves, and other travellers on this journey that we're taking together. So Ed Stanfield, as I mentioned, University Buffalo is leading this work, and the first meeting of this is happening in Washington on the 19th of September. And we're hoping to run a webinar following the results of that meeting. And again, we would like you to participate in that global collaboration and how we can develop and integrate universal design coding within the built environment. And again, as I said, a key coding system here is called the Omni-class classification system. So I suppose what the key message here is, yes, there's a very strong feel-good factor around universal design. It is for the common good. But for us to really deliver on universal design, we need to be out playing with the big boys. And these coding systems are where the game is at. We haven't been at this. We spent 5 years on the ICF work. We've still not completed it, as in it being totally embraced within the new guide at international standards. We hope that will happen in the next 5 to 6 months. Again, we can get you involved, because I know we've had great collaboration with your members who sit on this ISO committee representing Australia as well. So where's the government in all this? And again, a key term is knowledge translation. And how do we bridge this gap, the no-do gap? So we have some knowledge, we need to develop more, but also how do we actually apply this? And particularly the bridge between research and policy, and again between knowledge to action. A term I like, and the term was first coined again by the World Health Organization, and a colleague in Thailand came up with the triangle that moves the mountain. And he talks about who are the 3 distinct players, talks about the political involvement, the actors, the knowledge evidence that we need to produce, and then there's the whole social mobility, the stakeholders, which is everybody who's in this room, and our fellow designers across the globe. And part of this, what we have to become, are boundary hoppers, is an expression that has been used in Ireland. How do we bridge these silos? So how do we bridge between the environment, between transport, between education, between health? And I think he successfully makes the leap here. I haven't got the follow-on picture, but I think he got across to the other side. And your good government here in New South Wales, I got permission a number of years ago to use this hierarchy, which I modified, talking about training, supports, toolkits, codes of practice, standards, legislation and policy, which is at the top of the pyramid. And this has been, I've got permission from your own government here in New South Wales to actually use this. And 2 examples in the area of tourism. Last year was the year of the gathering, which was a way of getting all our expats from Australia and all across the world to spend some of their hard-earned money back in Ireland, who were very poor, we still are. So part of that, we looked at the whole area of tourism, and we developed the first standard, which we developed in less than 5 months. The normal national standard takes about 18 months. Again, what we used were key design tools, engaging with all key stakeholders. But not only did we develop just the standard, but we looked at the toolkits, because when we engage with industry, hotels, small B&Bs, pubs, of course, in Ireland, restaurants, they said we need toolkits because our front of house are between the age of 19 and 25, and they have the attention span of less than 30 seconds. I have 2 teenagers at home, I reckon it's about 8 seconds. So the toolkits were quick. 1, 2, how do I actually engage with customers who may be slightly different to my normal customer that comes through my front door. We're now developing case studies which we will be making available on our website in the next, before the end of the year. Again, we worked very closely in 2012 with the energy sector, with both the gas, electricity suppliers in Ireland. We've 7 major suppliers of electricity. And again, how they engage with customers. One of the key feedbacks we got from one of the commercial suppliers of energy, that they had a 61% reduction in complaints on their telephone system by adopting the Universal Design Toolkit that we developed. And that was in the course of a 3-month trial on using the standard and the toolkits developed. So again, putting that on the hierarchy, we talk about training and support internal champions. When we talked about the energy sector, finding internal champions within the industry were key. The toolkits we developed were very important because that's what industry asked us to do. They said the standard is fine, how do you actually apply this? Was key. Code of practice, we worked very closely, and the key partnership was not only with the Commission for the Energy Regulation in Ireland, but also the National Standards Body. So it was a 3 chairing of the developing the standard. The standard itself was developed in parallel with the National Standards Body. Again, with the good offices of the Commission for Energy Regulation, we got this built in as we were developing the standard into regulation, which was quite phenomenal, which was then developed as government policy, which all happened in less than 6 months. Part of that, in March of this year, we won an international policy 2000 with the Zero project. I would highly recommend you to have a look at this if you Google Zero project. It is quite a phenomenal, and I will present a number of their slides tomorrow. But we won this. This was me receiving the award from the chair and the organiser for the development of the SWIFT in 2012. So what do we need to deliver? The burden and responsibility for initiating, facilitating, sustaining citizen engagement falls heavily on the public servants. So I'm one of them, left hand, right hand. The magnitude of that meaning-making and narrative-creating task can hardly be overstated. So we have significant responsibility on how we do our work, and very important work. And Robert Reach said these words rather than Gerald Craddock in The Public Management in a Democratic Society. He talks about the role of the modern citizen-orientated public servant is no less than to provide the public with an alternate vision of what is desirable and possible, to stimulate discussion about them, to provoke re-examination of premises and values, and thus to broaden the range of potential responses and deepen society understanding of itself. So it is a significant burden which, with all your support, which I know we will get, and again that is reciprocated back to yourselves, of course, that we move along this roadmap. Universal design is a roadmap to lifelong social participation by children, people with disabilities and old people. It also creates and satisfies a new customer base. Finally, it allows for business models that are at once economically sustainable and socially beneficial. Another key reference for anybody who's into blogging, Rolling Rains is a brilliant blogger on the whole area of design, particularly the area of tourism is one of his big areas, but I thought that summarises where we're at and the road we're on, and universal design is very much a part of that roadmap. I've been going at a very fast rate and I appreciate your time. I have a little animation to show that, again, part of our education and how do we engage with new designers, undergraduates, etc. We've produced an animation over the last 3 years, which we just launched earlier this year. So I will pass over to our AV people to give you the normals, which are, it is normal.
Meet the normals, adventures in universal design. Exterior of a house on a sunny day, the normals are outside.
Meet Harry Normal. Harry is the father of the family. He is a stay-at-home dad. Meet Mary Normal. Mary is the mother of the family. She is a manager in the local supermarket. Meet PJ Normal. PJ is the baby of the family. Meet Betty Normal. Betty is the granny of the Normal family. She has arthritis and has lately experienced mild hearing and vision loss, but she is very active and uses a cane to get around. She loves to play the Wii regularly with her grandkids. Meet Susie Normal. Susie is 18 years old. She's going to college. She's rarely seen without her iPod and guitar. Meet Johnny Normal. Johnny is 10 years old, uses a wheelchair, and loves history and music.
Family enter the house.
Today will be a treat, as Betty is bringing the family for a pizza. First, we need to get the bus, so let's check the bus times.
Parents are using the family PC.
Oh dear. This seems to be very complicated.
Susie uses her smartphone with simple layout instead.
Now we've got it. Let's go. For many of us, we never think twice about how we use technology, travel, move in and out of buildings, or use the web. But really, when you think about it, we all often encounter problems doing these things.
Family at bus stop.
And accept this as a part of life. Consider what it is like for the normals getting on the bus and their experiences. Firstly, let's look at the bus shelter location. Are things in the way? Is the bus shelter big enough? Simple things like seating. Access to information when you need it in a way that makes sense. There are other environmental factors, such as light, noise, and so on.
Bus arrives.
And the design of the bus itself.
Betty and Susie get on. Dad tries to get babies when we upstep onto bus but fails. Bus driver asks for fare. Flustered mum drops her purse. Bus departs, leaving Betty, BJ and Johnny behind. A design studio in a different part of town.
Thanks to good universal design, it doesn't have to be like this. In order to build a working shelter that suits the needs of everyone, we need the right team. So, let's meet the team. First off, I'd like you to meet Siobhan. She is a software developer. Dara, our civil engineer. Rory is our architect. And Paul, our industrial designer.
Normals and designers around the table.
Creating an easy-to-use, universally designed bus shelter is a collaborative and fun process. Right, guys?
Always.
Let's see how you do it. Firstly, we have the discover phase, where all the designers keep an open mind, deferring any decision-making until they have considered a range of alternatives and approaches to the design. They need to have collected as much information as feasible, including new or existing feedback from people. They need to look at the project from the perspective of the end users. So who are the end users and what do they need? Well, a great way to find out is to involve the end user in the process through things such as focus groups, where we ask them what they think. Then we have the definition phase, where the designers must decide what they want the design to do. To help achieve this, they must keep in mind a range of people that will be using the design, outputs from the discover phase, and consider what they want the design to do. Then we have the development phase, where the designers look at actualizing the needs they have identified in the previous stage. This stage typically includes the development of simple preliminary designs and asking people what they think. Lastly, we have the delivery phase, where the designers see if it all works. They may get experts to look at their final designs. Another great way to test the design is through user testing or prototypes, where we test early versions of our products on users with a diverse range of abilities to see what works. If something doesn't work, the designers can go back to an earlier phase and try again. The universal design process, with the 4 phases: discover, define, develop, deliver. Now we have applied the universal design process to designing the bus shelter. Let's go back and see what happens this time.
Family approaching the bus shelter. Dad with PJ in a buggy and Johnny in a wheelchair now have an unobstructed path to the bus shelter. Bus shelter is tall enough to accommodate Mary's tall stature. Seating is low enough to accommodate Granny. Bus timetable and fare information is simple and understandable. Starts to rain. Bus shelter is large enough to shelter the entire family. Bus arrives. Bus meals, allowing level entry access to all the family.
Thanks to universal design, the normals can go about their day in a world that accommodates us all.
Mum has fare ready and pays without any fuss. Family waves and bus goes away.
Universal design is the design of a building or place, product, service or technology so they can be accessed, understood, and used to the greatest extent possible by all people, regardless of their age, size, ability or disability.
Created by the Centre for Excellence.
Very good. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope you got something out of that. Chairman says to me if there's any questions we can take, I'll hand back to the Chairman. Thank you again for the invitation, Jane, and we'll be here for the next 2 days. Thank you very much.